Well, welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode, of course, of Aaron's Opinion. Um, Today, we are joined by our next guest here, Dennis Sumlin. So, of course, just as I begin any and every episode of Aaron's Opinion, thank you for joining us today. By the way, who is Dennis Sumlin? You can take this conversation in any direction you possibly want. Go right ahead.
Who is Dennis Sumlin? Well, Dennis Sumlin is just a dude living in New York trying to make his way through life and decides that other people can also make their way through life. And so I endeavor to help those make it through life as I learn myself. And so I would say that I am part entertainer, part philosopher, and complete cool dude.
Okay, good. I already love the way you approach that. So, which of course gives us more areas, more sections for us to dig into here. Well, why don't you start talking about the fact that you believe that everyone can make it in life. You know, a lot of life, actually most of life, 90% of it of course is mind over matter. But how do you interpret that? Why do you feel so deeply that everyone can make it in life?
Because I think that we all have been given the tools that we need here on earth in this dimension. We've been given specific tools and gifts. Many of them are unique to ourselves. And those tools and gifts are designed to help us move through life, confront problems and challenges, and overcome them and grow as a result. And so that's how you do it. And all you need to do is unlock what those gifts are, because we spend so much time thinking that we don't have any gifts, that the other person is talented, that we're not. The other person is lucky, we're not. The other person has endurance, we don't. But the truth is that we all have the tools, and all we need to do is become conscious of them, own them, and use them, and we can unlock our own creator given powers.
Oh, I love talking to you. I had a feeling this is going to be a wonderful conversation to delve into. This is wonderful. So, Dennis, by the way, I was born blind with glaucoma. How did you become blind, by the way?
By the way, hey, Dennis, I see you're blind. How come you can't see? All right, so here it is. I was born blind out of one eye due to congenital glaucoma.
Right.
And as I got older, there was some eye stuff. I had like 7 surgeries on my eyes and
Me
things like that.
too.
Yeah. So my eyes have always been giving me, but I was able to see pretty decently out of the other eye, not 2020, but enough to go out and play with other kids and stuff. Couldn't see the blackboard though. Back in the day
Mm-hmm.
when I was growing up, I just showed my age. Right now, there was blackboards and green boards back then, not whiteboards. So at 11, I had a retinal detachment.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, ooh la la, and yeah, that completed the process of my blindness.
Oh my, oh my. Okay. And by the way, French is my second language. I'm a French speaker. That's why I use that expression. I speak French. But so in other words, you went through. It sounds like you went through more of a challenging time with your vision loss than I did. I was born with glaucoma, and luckily, my retinas are fine. So that's very traumatic for people. Yeah. By the way, you brought up age. So how old do you think I am?
How do I think you are?
Yeah.
So you can never tell age by voice. Um,
Now I've gotten younger and I've gotten older. So sometimes people can tell, but with my supposedly I have a wise and stern and deep voice. It's very known to be very wise and serious. So usually people think I'm a little older, but how old do you think I am?
I'm getting late 30s, 38.
Oh, I like that. I like that. That's what I want. I want you to think I'm older. I want you to think I'm that age. Actually, I'm 30. And
You
how
what?
old are you? Yeah, I'm 30. And how old are you?
You're 30. I am 44.
Oh, you're four. Okay. So yeah. So it's going to be. It's always interesting to talk to someone who's older than me, because the generational gaps are always interesting to study and how we interpret different things. Yes, and I remember as a little boy in the '90s, they had the brown boards, the green boards, black boards, and then basically by the time I was in high school, they had the smart boards, the white boards, and now I don't know. Now everybody's bored. So who knows? Um, well, what are some? I know exactly where I want to take this. So, what are some philosophical questions that you have for me? I really want to philosophize with you about the universe. Dig in as far you can really cut into me as deep as you want to go, and no question will bother me. I want to know what are some philosophical things you want to know,
Philosophical question that I want to know from you.
or that you're trying to answer yourself, or that
Oh,
both of us should try
well,
to answer. I want you to take the question either way you want it. I want you to talk about philosophy and dig into it.
all right. So what do you think the meaning of life is? I know I went traditional there, but let's start there.
I think the meaning of life is for us to accept that there are things that we do not know, and for us to make the most of the present so that we'll have the absolute best future for everyone. And I think that, oftentimes if we're going to talk about philosophy, we oftentimes have to mention religion. I'm not telling you what my religion is, and you should not tell me what your religion is, but I'll tell you that I love God. And I'm pretty convinced that basically the meaning of life is similar to why there's religion, which is that we want to understand where we were before we were born, why we were born, and what will happen when we die. And that's why we need philosophy, and that's truly the notion of meaning of life. And what about you?
Well, for me, I think the meaning of life is several things. I think that we are here, we are spirits having a human experience. We are souls.
Good.
We are spirits
Good.
anchored to this dimension through the human and through the material body here. But we're here as spirits to learn various lessons for our ultimate spiritual growth, right? So some of those lessons come in challenges and some of those lessons come in advantages. And so everything that happens is not a coincidence. Everything that happens is specifically set up so we as individuals can learn the lessons we need to learn. And the more we learn those lessons, the easier life will get. And then when it's time to transition, we have lessons to learn. And for those who choose to believe in such, we might come back with those lessons, and we need to learn more lessons for our spiritual ascension. So that's really what I think. But in general, I think that while we're in this life, we need to make the best decisions we can with the information that we have. Always be willing to grow and learn. Always be willing to grow and learn, but also at the same time, stay in touch with who we really are from our soul.
Beautiful. So the other thing too, and I'll circle back to the philosophy, but I also want to give you definitely some moments to talk about what you do in your professional life. So you seem like you're kind of a jack of all trades. You have a lot of sticks and a lot of different fires. Is the aura that you're sending me here? So how do you spend your time all day? By the way, I spend my time teaching online, recording my podcast, listening to other great podcasts, and stuff like that. But what about you?
Well, I spend my time similar to you, listening to certain podcasts. All right, listen to certain podcasts, reading books. I like to read a lot of different books in my niche of personal development and metaphysical science. All right, I watch documentaries. I'm a news junkie. I take in a lot of information. Also, I spend my time coaching and teaching. So I coach people and teach people around the art of public speaking and communication. And so if you are aspiring to be a public speaker or you're trying to get your podcast started, speaking of podcasts, I spend my time doing that. I also
Beautiful.
spend, yeah,
Beautiful.
I also spend my time with metaphysical science, astrology, numerology, and
Oh
other
yeah.
metaphysical
Oh yeah,
sciences.
that's right. That's right. That's right. That's
So,
right. Wait a minute. Hold on. before I forget this question, I love this stuff, man. Can you tell me more? Because okay, I did not take science courses in schooling, and I am someone, as you understand, was someone who was tremendously, in my opinion, discriminated against in education. So I never really got there with the sciences. So educate me. What's metaphysical? What is metaphysical? Well, first of all, let's define the terms. What does metaphysical science mean? Talk about numerology, talk about astrology, tie it all together. Go for it.
Okay, metaphysical. We all know what science is. So, science is the study of the phenomena of the planet, of the
Okay.
planet that we live on,
Right.
right? So, metaphysical science is the study of the invisible phenomena that affects us every day in life. So
Understood.
the word metaphysical, right? So it's physical, but it's meta. So it's something that's underneath the physical, like metadata, the data that's underneath the file. Like your
Right.
podcast is
Okay.
going to be metadata in that podcast, and it's only going to display when it's played on certain devices. So the same thing goes with metaphysical. It's what's under the physical that we all have that you can only see when you become conscious of it. So that's metaphysical science, the study
Well,
of
now how
things
do
that are
I
not
now
seen.
how do I become conscious of it? How do I see it under there?
There are different methods to do so, but we are going to talk about a little bit of astrology and numerology
Mm-hmm.
because they are different, but they are related to each other. And so, just briefly, astrology is the study of the planets and their electromagnetic effect on us on the planet. So, we all know what our sun sign is because if someone asks you what's your sign, most of us know what it is because we know our birthday.
Cancer.
But
For me, it's Cancer, by the
for
way.
me, for you, it's Cancer. For me, it's Sagittarius. So, but that's where the sun's position was when you were born. For you here in the West, we go by the sun, and so when you were born, the sun was positioned in Cancer. But the other planets were positioned in other places. Your moon may have been somewhere different. Mercury is somewhere different. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all the other places, all the other planets are in different places, and that puts together your default like life path and personality based on the position of the planets in the sky,
I love it. Love
what
it. Love it.
sign
Love
they
it.
were in, and so forth. And and,
I'm
and
just so passionate about it too. I love talking about it, and it's just you know what, and I believe it's true because anytime I read my horoscope, I think that's what it's called, right? Where you see the thing and it says, "Dear Cancer, today you're such and such." That's a
Mhm.
horoscope, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure I was using the right vocab. As I don't, it's not a word I use every single day. So I've looked up that type of thing, and I've noticed that my horoscope for Cancer is 101% accurate every single time I would look. So just based on the fact that I was born on the 2nd of July, 1991, specifically speaking at 17:10, or as some other people would say, 5:10 p.m. What can you already predict and infer about my life path?
Well, what I would say, well, first, I will say, there's a lot of things I can say about that. But the first thing I want to drive home for anyone who wants their chart done, you would need what you just provided, well, you didn't provide your location, but we're not doing a chart right now. We're just doing the general thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you need your location and time of birth to pull up an accurate,
Washington D.C. By the way.
yeah,
Okay.
cool. So you need your location and time of birth to pull up an accurate chart. And I would, if we were doing your full chart, I would take the information you have and I'd pull up your chart and I'd be able to see where all the planets were in your chart and their relation to each other and you. And I'd be able to tell everything from your relationship to your mammy, to what your home life is like, to what your love life could be, what the potentials are for that, your work, your hobbies. You can see basically your horoscope wheel. So it sets forth the
Cool.
framework for everything. Now,
Oh.
you giving me your birthday gives me an opportunity to talk about a little about numerology because it's related, right? So numerology, you don't need your time of birth or your location for numerology. Numerology just works with the numbers in your birthday. So, for example, you being July 2nd, I already know that one of the essence of your personality is the 2 vibration because you're born on the 2nd. And the 2nd is a number that looks for compromise and they're about diplomacy and warmth. It's a number that is synonymous to the water element, which is sensitive and nurturing. 2 looks for balance and diplomacy and compromise. Two also is the sacral chakra, which is actually a very sensual area. So, but just in general, that would be the essence of your birthday. And so the numbers work on vibrations. Your life path number has a vibration. Every number in your birthday has a vibration. And that tells things about you. I mean, these charts are very, very complex.
Yeah, I would already in the future, I would already want one from you just based on the way you're talking to me, based on your love and passion for it. I just want to learn. I want to learn from you. I want to. The other thing is, I do believe in this. Factually speaking, how do I even ask this? Like, how do I even phrase this question? As it relates to the study of numerology and astrology, how much rats? How do I even ask this question? I guess like how factual are these charts? In other words, how many times have you been able to prove 101% accuracy from creating a sketch or chart like this in someone else's life? How to what factual validity you've been able to prove?
I would always say nothing is going to be 100% just because we're talking about your entire life. Some parts of your chart don't activate right away. You are not your whole chart right away. Your life has to unfold. But in generally speaking, I would say these things. I mean, if I'm going to give a number to it, I would say a good 95%. And the reason why I can say that, not only because I've done other people's charts and gotten their feedback, and this is what I do practically every day now. Not only can I say that, but because I didn't originally know my own time of birth accurately, I was using a wrong chart for a lot of my life, and I knew there were certain gaps missing.
Oh, so, that's cute.
Yeah. So I was my own study. So I knew. So when I got the right chart, it answered all the questions I was wondering that the wrong chart didn't answer. And so I was not knowingly, I was my own experiment on whether astrology works or not, because I was living by a wrong chart, and I knew there were things wrong with that chart.
God,
but that's the only time I had.
I hate it when you're living the wrong life. I hate it when they do that to you. God, you could have been living.
You know what I'm saying? But I mean, it didn't stop. But the funny thing is, I had the wrong chart, but because the chart was never mine, it didn't impact the actual course of my life.
So it was both. So the ironic humor is the chart was both wrong and useless.
That's right. And when I got the right chart, it explained everything that already happened.
That's definitely my sense of humor. That's fantastic. That's adorable. That's my sense of humor.
So if anyone knows astrology works, I do, because I was their live experiment without even knowing it.
Yeah, well, now you know. That's cute. Did the right chart say that Dennis will eventually discover that the chart he's been living by for 30 years has been completely wrong and he's been living the wrong life? Did the right chart show that?
It did. You know why it...
This is bizarre.
You know why it did? It did because what's called transits.
Right.
When you hear things, oh, this is in this house and this is transit in your ninth house. Those are transits. And about the time I found my actual time of birth and a middle name I didn't know I had, it just so happens that a bunch of planets was transiting my house of identity.
Wow. I mean, oh, my middle name is Samuel, by the way. Yeah, no, I'm gonna work with you. We're gonna catch up. We're gonna catch up in a couple of days. I'm gonna catch up with you because I want to learn. You know, the reason, I'm very entertained by these types of things, and they're true. And really, the reason I want to learn about this for myself is because I'm someone who has a successful life and I have a hard life. And I want to understand intellectually what that question was before. What's the meaning of all this nonsense we're going through? It would be nice to put sense to the nonsensical and to truly understand. We'll circle back to that in a minute. So what are some, and by the way, I love public speaking. I love talking on my podcast. I love educating people, and it just makes me happy. Having these conversations makes me a happier person, and I hope it's making you happy. Really, I really do. But a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, which is why there are more people that listen to podcasts than create podcasts. So, what are some skills that you use to kind of motivate someone to be a public speaker? The reason I ask is you can't teach motivation. So, how do you teach someone to be a public speaker? That must be really hard.
Well, I mean, you're right. You can't teach motivation. So the person already has to want to do it. So people who hire a coach, presumably, if they want to be a public speaker, they want to get better. All right. So they're already motivated to do it. Because they hired me. So now the next step is how do we get them on stage and speaking successfully where they get their message across? And so that is when we start. And you're right. 75% of people have a fear of public speaking. And so that we can get deep into this, but just in general, the way that you build confidence in yourself as a public speaker is, number one, know what your topics are. What do you know everything about? Never speak about anything you don't know anything about. So if you want to put me on stage, I can speak about astrology, numerology, men's personal development. Those are big topics for me. I can go on and on about those. I cannot speak about cooking recipes. So always speak about what you know about. That's number one. Number two, always practice. If you have a presentation coming up, practice it. Don't write out the words of your speech. Think of those key words and practice. And number three, of course, is the only way to build real confidence is to do the thing you're not confident about, right? So if you're afraid of speaking, get up there and speak more and speak more. Eventually, you'll start building up your confidence because you'll start having experiences. You'll start having successes you didn't expect, because the audience is gonna like it. You always are a worse critic of yourself than the audience. So just start speaking in small rooms if you want to start, on a podcast if you want to start, maybe to just people in your household if you want to start. But speak, and you'll gain more confidence in speaking. Those are my three things off the top of my head.
Beautiful. You're right. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I think that the podcast universe and the podcast sphere has become the stage, But what do you think about that? I mean, what are some differences that are not noticeable when it comes to, what are some differences that I would not think of when it comes to the difference between speaking publicly on a stage in front of people and speaking publicly on a podcast? What have you found?
Well, the differences are, one, most podcasts is going to be audio. So it can be video podcasts, but the majority of the podcasts are audio. So unlike the stage, most people aren't going to actually see you. And so your voice and how you present yourself is very important. The way that you speak, how you move along your ideas, what your podcast is going to be about, whether you're going to have guests or not, and so forth, because it's hard to kind of do an hour-long monologue. You got to really be good. There are people who can do it, but yeah, on stage it's different because you have the stagecraft, you got your appearance, you can physically use rhetorical devices during your presentation. There's a lot more to kind of fill up the audience's psychological bandwidth. But on a podcast, you're not seen. You just have your voice. And so you have to be more intentional, probably, in a podcast and how you keep things flowing. And let's see, what else? I think that's the main difference, is seen versus not being seen. And it really emphasizes how you keep people's interest in a podcast.
I suppose. I don't know. Do you think people are more willing to drift off in person or on a podcast? Because probably if it's a podcast, if they know they're going to drift off, they won't even listen, But I don't know. What do you think as far as retention?
For me, I'm a drifter. If I'm somewhere and I can I get distracted. So what I do when it comes to podcasts is I always download the podcast so I can hear it on my own time. If you're going to a speech, you can't do that. If you're seeing someone live in a speech or whatever, or a conference, you can't necessarily download it when you want. And so podcasts are convenient that way, because I download podcasts, listen to when I want to. So if they're interesting enough, I can, and if I feel myself drifting or something else comes up, I'll pause it and come back to it. So for me, it's, podcasts are very convenient to listen to, especially when they're pre-recorded.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and your delivery is beautiful. The way you approach speaking, you have a beautiful voice. I mean, I would listen to your voice any day. I've noticed that the guests that I have just speak better and better. And there are some people, I mean, I know it makes me sound critical, but some people don't have a voice, don't have a good voice for podcasting. That is a thing. You have to have just the right voice, I think. But that's really interesting. Okay. So if someone is so scared or so apprehensive about public speaking in the first place, then why would they come to a Dennis and say, "Hey, Dennis, I'm too scared to be a public speaker, but I want to be a public speaker"? What would be their motivation in coming to you in the first place?
Well, some people's motivation is that they want to be a podcaster. That is some people's motivation. Other people's motivation is more about, I want to deliver my message. I'm a coach, I'm a doctor, I'm a psychologist, I'm a child therapist, and I want to deliver my message on stage. So sometimes you get people coming out of their own career. I'm an educator. I spoke to someone yesterday in one of my classes that I teach around podcasting. He was advocating for travel around Africa. So he wanted to have a podcast about traveling around Africa. So usually people who are motivated to speak on stage or to have a podcast, they want to spread what they already do to a wider audience. So it's a way of getting an audience, broadening their brand and their market. Some of it do it for business advancement in their company. I had a client from a Fortune 50 company. He needed some communication work to kind of help him become more of a leader, because in order to be a great leader, you got to understand communication. So those are some of the reasons.
That's really interesting, and I have noticed, and we're gonna get some haters in the comments when I say this, but I have noticed that I am someone who is blessed with great doctors, but all doctors that are great are not great communicators. In fact, I have consistently noticed that doctors oftentimes struggle to communicate. I have noticed that they are very good at what they do, but not good always at communication. So, is it simply a matter of that everybody has their strengths and weaknesses? Or is it more back to the numerology type of idea where each person's life is set up so that they will be better speakers or not better speakers? In other words, how much of these things do we have true control over, and how much of these things are kind of preset in our own career path and in our own lives?
That's a great question. I would say also another addition there. Not only doctors have maybe not be good communicators, and doctors are not necessarily good writers either, understanding what they write down. But also people who work in IT often aren't good communicators.
Whew. Whew. Holy moly! Get me a translator. Hire someone. Hey, speak French to me. I would get more to these the IT. By the way, guys, we aren't making fun of these people. We're just saying that we're giving our opinions, and this is an opinion show, and these are all sweeping generalizations. I've noticed it too. The IT people and the engineers.
Yes.
Dear God, try to read it. If you can stomach reading an email from an engineer, you are a strong man. Those people, those engineers. I mean, I get it, because as you can tell, I'm on the Asperger spectrum. I'm on the spectrum, so I get it. But even when I read an engineering email, it's like just the way their brain writes. It's just really crazy the way they express themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. But to think about it, they don't have to in their job. They don't have to do it. And so a lot of people from IT come because they want to be able to speak, because speaking will elevate them towards better leadership. And a lot of people in IT have side projects they want to do, because some of them want to get out and do their own thing. So, but back to your question about talent versus predestined. I think most people can develop their speaking skills, no matter where they're coming from. Most people can. I have not met somebody who does not have their own flavor. They just need to be trained. Okay. So I think that your chart regardless on what chart we're talking about, set forth certain potentials in your life, as in it gives you certain propensities to gravitate towards certain fields. But within those charts, we all have a certain set of talents. And I think that most people don't even bother unlocking most of their talents. So I think most people are able to speak if they really committed themselves to and got the right training.
Amen. Amen. You are so right. What is a talent that, if there's only one talent that if you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, what's a talent that you would want to unlock for yourself that you've never unlocked?
A talent that I want to unlock for myself that I've never unlocked. Wow, that's a great question.
Of course, I think I just shot myself in the foot because now I think I'm going to get that question.
Oh, well, I want to hear yours too. But
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't have an answer to that great question. That's why
okay. Well, while I answer you, you could be thinking of answering
okay.
me. You know, so come on, let's answer the question. You know, man to man, man up and answer the question. All right. So I'm going to be honest with you. So you got to give me an honest answer. The superpower that I wish I had, the talent I wish I had that I don't have now, is caring what people think. I wish I had the talent to just not care what people thought of me. Sometimes I get a little bit.
Okay, I'm okay. Now I do not understand your response. In other words, did you say that you wish that you could stop caring?
Yes.
So in other words, you want to be. So in other words, you want to be a person of carelessness. You want to be a careless person.
Less emotional.
Okay, careless.
Less emotional.
Okay, well, what's the difference between less emotional and careless? If you're less emotional, you're careless.
Well, less emotional doesn't necessarily mean you're careless. It just means you're less susceptible to the whims that go on during the day, random people's impressions of you, things like that.
Oh, I have a solution. Just lock yourself up in your house and don't talk to people.
No, there's some people who don't care. There's some people who you can say whatever you want, it bounces off of them. Things can happen, it bounces off of them. I don't bounce like that sometimes. So yeah.
So in other words, are you telling me that you're one of these people that just has to you feel like you always constantly have to care? Is that
I think I'm too self-conscious. That's the bottom line.
That fascinates me.
Yeah.
If I were to answer my own question, I would say that I am someone who wishes that I understood the world philosophically through as we say, a neurotypical lens. With my, mild Asperger's and blindness, I have a very different perception of things that happen in my life, and I'm very conscious of it. But still, I wish, in a philosophical context, I wish I had a neurotypical lens to see what was happening in my own life. So that would be my own, superpower that I guess I would hope through the wisdom of podcasting and my love for podcasting. I do hope in my lifetime to be able to, unlock that in some facet, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But back to your interest in podcasting. So tell us about your podcast. Obviously, you have a podcast.
Yeah, my podcast is about men's personal development. And so the guests that I have on the show are men who either have a story of their own personal overcoming, their own conquering of their own low self-esteem and things like that, how they got where they were, or people who work in the men's development field. So we talk about men's, self-confidence, sexual well-being, spiritual well-being, anything having to do with men's personal development. And of course, being that I'm an astrologer numerologist, we do sometimes have guests on that topic as well as it relates to personal development. Yep.
Cool. So have you ever spoken with a professional astrologer?
Yes.
Interesting. And how did that conversation with a professional astrologer enhance your knowledge in astrology and numerology? What was that enhancement, I would say?
Well, I mean, it didn't. I mean, if you want to be honest, I mean, I bring the guests on, so they're not necessarily enhancing me per se. They're on the program so we can share information with the guests so they can give their perspective and their outlook and their advice to the guests. So sometimes people we have on there, they may have written books, they may have courses, or they may have personal stories that will help the listeners out there. So the guests I have on, some of them um, give me new information, but sometimes they're not really giving me new information, but we're sharing information with the audience.
I'm intrigued by that. You said that sometimes you have a guest on that gives more knowledge to the audience, but is not necessarily contributing to your knowledge.
Well, for example, the
Hmm.
other day
Mm-hmm.
I had someone on. He was an excellent numerologist, and I already know him. He's been in my classes. We've done readings. We've done joint readings together. We know the same things, just we use different words to say them. All right. So he's a numerologist and he's an author of his own book. So I had him on the program, and we're talking about numerology, but we both know the same things. But I brought him on the program so he can talk about his book, so we can talk about his professional numerology reading business and so forth. And so maybe he can share perspectives with the audience in his own way. Because I find that when me and him talk, the people who listen or get different things out of what we're saying, even though we're saying the same things, just differently. And so during the podcast, he didn't say anything I didn't already know. It wasn't about sharing with me. I already knew him. It was about sharing with the audience.
I get it. Cool. No, I think with every guest that I have, I try to combine the two. In other words, it's a guest that hopefully I don't know, but still know a little bit about, but then it's hopefully a guest that I'm interested in and want to learn from. See, so I combine those three things to create an episode where I'm learning with the guest is teaching me, and then both of us teach the audience at the same time. So you should always have, I don't know, it's only my opinion. I always try to have guests where they kind of have some material that I want to learn from them. I try to, give more. What's the expression? Not take more what you give, but contribute. Something. Those things you see on the Facebook groups all the time. Don't take more than you give, or don't give more what you. It's like, I try to give more than I take. In other words, I think is what it comes down to. I guess. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, I've had
Okay.
both kinds.
Right.
I've had podcasts for years, so not every
Sure.
guest is going to be the same kind of guest. There's some guests who I learn a lot from, and there's some guests I bring on for the benefit of the audience. I do it all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I've experienced that too, where sometimes it's I don't know. I find from my own background, my own philosophy of it, I find that I find that I build the best episode when I'm learning from the guest learns from me, and then hopefully the audience appreciates the knowledge. But that's just me. No, I definitely see what you're saying. So back to um, some of these other, men's issues and men's topics. So, what are some issues going on in men's development that would not be obvious to me? What are some hidden issues that you're seeing with men these days?
Well, I don't know how hidden they are to you because I don't know your knowledge of men's issues, and I don't know what issues you've confronted. But just in general,
Right.
men are generally speaking, men's problems or challenges mostly are centered around, let's see, self-esteem, self-confidence. Their resonance with their own manhood or self-confidence. Of course, relationship issues. Uh, finding a relationship, finding the right relationship for who they are. And that, of course, that relates to intimacy and sex issues that
Mm-hmm.
come up sometimes. So we got those issues that come up. Most of the time, it's around self-esteem. Of course, it's around money too, job, money, career. And there's also men that may be dealing with various levels of different kinds of addictions or recovering from different various addictions, maybe porn addiction, sex addiction, things like that. And so just the general areas that you might imagine men might be challenged in.
Sure. But what are some areas that you have noticed what are some areas when you've been talking to these different men? What are some sections or issues that have really surprised you as an issue just for men that you didn't necessarily wouldn't occur to you that that would be an issue? What are some surprises, I guess, that you have found?
Oh, that's a hard one. Hmm. Not shocked by much. So it's a hard one. I have to think about it. Issues that I wouldn't think a man would have that they've had. Hmm. Woo. Yeah, that's a hard one.
Well, I would think one of them that society would be surprised by is that men need to talk to other men about men's issues, right? That's one.
That's not a shocker to me, but yeah, I guess for most people
Well,
it would be.
well, for most people it would be. They would think that men wouldn't have issues is one of them, but actually men clearly do. You know, but I don't know. I don't know. The other thing is that I do notice, and I see it a lot too, where a lot of men seem to lack self-esteem. What is self-esteem, and how do we value or measure self-esteem? Well, what can you teach me about that?
Well, self-esteem is basically just, do you like yourself? You know, when you hold someone in esteem, that's you like them, you think favorably of them. They're cool people, they're cool dudes. So with a self-esteem, you think yourself is a cool dude. You like yourself. You generally think optimistically. You like your qualities, you like who you are. You know, hopefully it moves into self-love, hopefully. And so when a man has a low self-esteem, that's driven by a lot of different factors. Sometimes it's driven by their upbringing. Maybe they didn't have a very supportive parental system. Maybe they lacked a proper male role model. Maybe they were supposedly, one of the odd kids that got made fun of. Maybe no girl would talk to them, things like that. Some men suffer self-esteem issues because of their body. Maybe they're overweight. Maybe they feel they have a small penis. Maybe they some body related issues. And by the way, that's a surprise, by the way, for most people. Men have body issues. Men have body image issues. It's not just women. Men have complexes about their body, how they look, how much they weigh, how big they are. But popularly, we think it's women that have the issues, but men do too. So there's an answer to that question that you asked earlier. Another reason why men would have a low self-esteem is related to their performance. I don't have a job. I don't have enough money. I can't provide for my family. My wife is this is this. So there's a lot of different reasons. Plus, society's expectation on what a man is often puts men under pressure to meet up to a standard. So, society has these very fixed, if you're a man, you're supposed to do this and not do this. If you're a man, you're not supposed to cry. You're supposed to do all these little silly standards. The average man often feels pressure to live up to these standards and beats himself up when he can't. And so, yeah, that's, I know I said a lot there, but
I
yeah, that's
wanted you
some of the
to.
things.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I think that's very comforting to other blind men out there who might be having those issues, with their body or with their personality or things like that. Yes. Yes.
Yes. And speaking of blind men, I have
Mhm.
definitely spoken to blind men who they haven't, because you know how people are when you're blind, your parents overprotect you, the system, this and all this other stuff. So some blind men haven't had a real sense of their own manhood because society and their parents take it away from them by not allowing them to be independent, by not allowing them, oh, I want to move out. You can't move out because you're blind, or I want to do this. You can't do that. And, society blocks them. So sometimes young men growing up who are blind, they kind of get disempowered before they become empowered. And I sometimes they need a little help with their self-esteem as it relates to their manhood and their confidence and their self-sufficiency, because society snuffs that sense out of them sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that happens to all people at some point in their lives, at some point, not just to blind people. I think that happens to all of us. I think that's a shared. I think you're 100% correct, and it's also a shared um, experience. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Well, back to some of the philosophical issues that we deal with. Just relating back now to the astrology, numerology, because I'm just so fascinated, and I'm not going to say out loud that I believe, but to some extent, it's kind of like engineering with numbers in a greater sense. So I do believe it. I believe in astrology and numerology if it's delivered appropriately and accurately is what I mean. So what does what do astrology, numerology, and Dennis think about the end times, the end of our universe, and what is to come?
Well, I would say, what does Dennis think? I don't know. Let's talk about astrology and the cosmos and the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little bit off of astrology for a second. We
Go for
know
it.
scientifically, astronomically, the universe is expanding, over time from the supposed Big Bang all the way. So it's expanding. At some point, it's going to start retracting. Those kinds of things take billions and billions and billions of years. So to say when the universe is going to end, it could take billions of years. We also know that the sun is a star. The lifespan of a star, of course, is billions of years. But once that lifespan runs out, the star begins to die, and so it's going to expand and change color, which means it's changing temperature, and probably absorb the planets closest to it, which of course now is Mercury, Venus, the Earth. I don't know if it'll go as far as Mars. So those are some of the astronomical things that could happen, I suppose, down the line. As far as astrology is concerned, there is no necessarily depiction of the end of times, but what astrology can offer you is a guideline to what may happen during different generations. So if you look at the outer planets like Uranus, Neptune, and especially Pluto, if you track their movement, of course, you'd learn the symbolism of the signs they're moving through. When you track their movement, you can see direct correlations between their movements and events in the world. So, for example, what's going on now around the world and in the United States is exactly what would be going on now, given that Pluto is transiting Capricorn. And so the stuff that's happening with the government and the loss of trust in government and the crumbling of this and all that is set forth, symbolized by Pluto moving through Capricorn since '08. So you
Wow.
can read
Wow.
the generational trends through the outer planets. So yeah.
This is so cool. I love a guest like you. This is you're making things make sense. You're putting sense to nonsense. By the way, I'm not going to let this go because I heard it slip out. Are you a Big Bang denier?
I'm not either. I said it. Sometimes I make my
Do you know?
language
Do you know why I said? Do you know what word I picked up on? Right?
supposed.
Correct. That
I
means you're a
speak
denier.
I speak in those terms just in case other people buy or don't buy into
Oh,
saying
oh, Dennis, no, 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 don't do that. Don't encourage you, Dennis. You're encouraging people to be deniers,
no.
Dennis.
I'm giving people I said if you want to believe Big
I
Bang,
know.
just
Okay.
like the other day, I
Mm-hmm.
said I don't want to offend people, but I was talking about angel numbers and what the numbers meant when you see them constantly in repeating patterns and things. And we were talking about the number three. And I said, if this is what you believe, you can consider three a Christ number if that's what you want to believe. So I say things
Okay.
because I like to speak interdenominationally. So the three symbolize, I'll give you an example. I'm using the three. The three symbolizes ascendant masters, right?
Right.
So an ascendant master can be whatever you believe in. If you believe in Jesus Christ, then that's your ascendant master. If you believe in the Prophet Muhammad, that's your ascendant master. I don't follow any one of those things as an ascendant master. But when I'm interpreting numbers for other people, then they're not me. So if you believe in Jesus Christ and the number three repeated a lot of times in your life is going to symbolize you needing to tap in more into Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean I need to, it means you need to. I
Right.
follow a
Right.
different ascendant master. So I speak these ways so people know that whatever they believe in is valid and this system works for everybody, regardless on their belief system.
Beautiful. Beautiful response. Beautiful. Well, So how? I mean, I'm kind of just fixated by it. I mean, how? I mean, it's like I believe it, but then I believe what you're like. I know what you're saying is. I agree with the truth of what you're saying, which is 100% true. But then also, as a healthy podcaster, philosopher, educator, teacher, human being, I also have to be healthy and question it. You know, I have to ask. I have to test. I have to give it a push. You know, I have to push it around to test it out to see if it holds up, you know? How long in history have people been doing this numerology? What do you know about the history of it?
The numerology and astrology. Now they say numerology was the first because it takes numbers to do everything.
Right,
You
probably.
can't work with astrology unless you deal with numbers. So numerology is really the foundation of everything. Some astrologers will tell you that astrology is, but astrology depends on numbers because you're looking at the degrees and longitude and latitude.
Mm-hmm.
So the nature of astrology works by numbers. Everything does. And this goes back thousands and thousands of years, back to Babylonia and all these other ancient names, right? So,
Indeed, indeed.
and there's famous numerologists that you've studied in school, but they didn't teach you the numerology part. They taught you the geometry part, which is Pythagoras,
Right.
right? And in fact, all shapes have a vibration, not just the number. The numbers are just shapes. All shapes have symbolistic vibrations. The numbers are just shapes. Other shapes do too. If you go back into studies about ancient Hebrew, ancient Jewish religion, they are deep into numerology, looking at the symbolism of your name as well, the pronunciation, the sound waves of what the letters make. Like this stuff is steeped in religious history, is steeped in world history in general, numerology and astrology. So,
Mm.
so there's that.
Love it, love it, love it. Are numerologists ever hired to work within the government to help us run the world?
Yes. A lot of times people are using astrologers. I don't know of too many. Well, if you, I don't know of too many numerologists that's helped rock the world, but many people feel that astrologers help put together the structure of many of the systems we're living under today. So, for example, I'll give you an example here, a real quick one. Well, a couple of them really. Well, one, they say that some people use astrology for the stock market. They use astrology for this and that. There's a saying that says millionaires don't look at astrology, billionaires do. So that's a little phrase I hear bantied about. But an example of how at least the United States is constructed through astrologers, the system in which our country is built, the important days in which the country is focused on are all aligned in water signs on purpose. All right. So let's look at, we've got the founding of the country, which is set to be July 4th. It's not actually July 4th.
It's not. I know.
It's not, but it's designated to be July 4th for a reason. So, and that's in a sign of Cancer. The election day is decided is in early November for a reason. It's made to be around November 4th. Now it's the first Tuesday because of different traveling issues in the 18 and 1700s. But it's designed to be on or around November 4th, which is a sign of Scorpio. The original inauguration day was March 4th, which is a sign of Pisces. And so this country was organized to align with the water triplicity, March 4th, July 4th, November 4th. And so that's just a small example on how astrology was responsible for the construction of this world.
Super cool.
Because the real dates to those things aren't what those dates were set up to be, but they were put there to coincide with the water triplicity on purpose.
So I guess there would have had to have been people like you and I back then who would have had to sit down on, I guess, iTunes 1776, I guess, and say, look, we need to figure this out. When you look back in history, they don't mention it much, but I definitely believe that the forefathers of our great nation, if they were smart enough and brilliant and gifted and kind enough to give us a nation run by the people, they would have definitely understood astrology and numerology.
They knew
So
astrology. Benjamin Franklin was an astrologer. Everybody's an astrologer. Nancy Reagan wasn't. The Reagans ran the White House through
that's,
astrology.
you know what, that's okay. That was a bit of so I know who they are. It's not my, I know who they are though. That was a bit of an obsession though. That was silly. That's why I say you have to be,
but it's not silly.
Right.
And I'll tell you why it's not silly.
No, I know, but okay. Right.
Yeah, I'll tell you. You know why it's not silly? And
because
here's something. Look at here. Now, Nancy Reagan claimed that she stopped what's called the zero curse. So what the zero curse is, now I don't know this. This is a story. Sometime back in the 1830s, somebody put a curse on the presidency. And so where every time someone is elected in a 0 year, they die in office. And that's actually been consistent since 1840. Mm-hmm. The person that stopped it, supposedly, was Nancy Reagan. Reagan was the first person not to die in office because he was elected on a 0 year. Right. He was the first president since 1840 not to die in office, being elected on a 0 year. And Nancy Reagan takes responsibility for that, ending that through whatever she does with astrologers and whatever other mysticism she might have been into. And that's observable record because you can look at the presidential elections.
Well, hopefully, you know what? Let's go with, who knows? Hopefully she solved it. Let's just go with that.
Well, ever since then, it hasn't happened. We had a 2000. He didn't die in office. The person elected in 2020, we hope he doesn't die in office. So it's broken. It hasn't happened since 1960.
Right. Yeah. Got it. Yes. Yeah. That's really interesting. You know, it just really fascinates me how we're able to use these equations to understand things. Of course, I'm sure you have a great answer prepared. I'm sure you're going to predict this question. What if I told you that I've heard of other people who say that our lives are just a simulation and we're living in a simulation paradox? What say you?
I don't have an exact opinion about that, but what I will say is I think that we as humans are very, very, very uncomfortable not knowing something. And so what people do is they try to create reasons for things that they don't understand, so they have a reason.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Dennis, as I start to close out today, I just loved talking about this with you, and so will the audience. I know that you're going to love this when I say this. If you can ask me really only one question to see if I'm really worth my salt as a podcaster and to really make me sweat, what do you want to ask me?
Whoa, well, that's a very interesting question. Where do you see your podcast going in 5 years?
I see it going to more people, helping more people, and educating more people, and entertaining more people.
Well, that didn't make you sweat. Good answer. Still didn't make you sweat, though.
If someone wants to get in touch with you about your show, your podcast, all the amazingly fascinating things that you're doing, how would they do that? How would they get in touch with Dennis?
They can get in contact with me. First, you can go to the website, coreconfidencelife.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get all the latest news there. And maybe you'll want to become a member as well. So you can contact me at coreconfidencelife.com, or you can email me at dennis@coreconfidencelife.com. And you can also find me, of course, on all the social media like Twitter and Facebook it's going to be under Dennis R. Sumlin or Core Confidence Life, either one.
That didn't make you sweat either. But you know what? I loved that conversation. Absolutely adored it. Don't hang up, but I would like to wrap this episode by saying, Dennis, God bless you. Keep up your great work. To all the great guests from around the world, to all you listeners out there, thanks so much, everybody. Stay safe out there. And as we say here on Aaron's Opinion, Dennis, what do we say? Do you know how I end the episode?
No, I don't.
That's okay. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.